Hello, and welcome to the UT Rio Grande Valley virtual Allstate Tuba Clinic. My name is Dr. Scott Roeder. I am the professor of tuba here at UT Rio Grande Valley. We are now in my office where I am going to give some instructions and introduce the etudes, and then at the end of each talking there's going to be a performance of each etude that was recorded in our beautiful Performing Arts Center. I wanted to give a chance to hear the tuba sounds really good in there, and hear a chance how it sounds in there, and get a better environment than an office. So I hope you enjoy the performances as they come up. Before we get into the etudes, I want to talk a little bit about the Allstate process and how to prepare, and some of the things that will be different this year. As most of you know, the Allstate process will be virtual this year, so every audition will be recorded, where you will record into a website. At home or wherever you are going to do it. It could be at home, maybe in a band hall. However, you'll be recording either into a computer or a phone or an iPad or a tablet with either the mic on the device or a USB mic. A couple things with this. As you record, you can record as many times as you want. However, if you go and record it and then you want to record again, the previous take is erased. So you have to make a decision if you think you can get it better, or if it's going to sound the same as or sound worse than the previous take. If you think you can get it better, record again. If you don't know if you can, you may want to consider keeping the one that's already there, because you can't go back and use the other ones. You only get one. Whatever is there is what you get to use. Whenever I have students recording, I find that the third time through is usually the best take. After that, they tend to get a little bit worse because of mental fatigue. The other thing you'll want to do with the process is, as you're recording, make sure you're in a quiet room. If you're at your home, find a quiet room, or do it at a time when no one else is in the house, so that you're not interrupted with other children or other siblings or parents asking for things. The other thing is, find a room that's not too big and not too small. If it's don't record in a closet, but don't find the biggest room with 20-foot ceilings either, because you get too much it gets too much boom and you can't hear the clarity of articulation. So those are some tips that'll help you with the process. Now, as we're preparing for the audition, I want you to think about what judges are listening for. That is going to tell you a lot about how you want to prepare. The things that most judges like to listen for is they like to hear great sounds with great clarity, especially on tuba. We have a tendency to play unclear and get a fuzziness in the fronts of the notes. The other thing is we got to play with great time and great rhythmic integrity. Those are the three biggest things that if you can make happen in your audition, you're going to get higher up in the placement. After that, playing things that are written on the page, like dynamics and accents and things like that, are important. Articulation markings. And then after that is the musicality. Those are the five things that judges really like to hear. But those first three things, if those aren't there, the dynamics and the musicality they don't listen to it if your sound isn't good and your time's not good. So really focus on sound and time. One of the things we can do to work on that is use a metronome when we practice. I use a metronome constantly when I'm working up music, whether it's an etude or for a solo performance. I always use the metronome, and especially on the slow pieces. We almost need more rhythmic integrity on the lyrical music, because it's real easy to stop counting through, and then we have a tendency to cheat the long notes. Don't hold them out the right amount of counts. So metronome is really important. It also helps you work up the technical music. You start slow with the metronome. You can play a section 3 to 5 times, then speed it up 5 clicks, 3 to 5 times, speed up. So it gives you a regimented way to practice technical music so you get it clean. The other thing then overall I would work on is getting consistency in all 3 etudes. Don't wait to start the third etude until a week before the audition. Start practicing all of them now, so they all have time to simmer and cook. It's like cooking brisket. The longer, you can cook a brisket in 3 hours, but it may not be very good. If you cook it for 17 hours, man, that's some good brisket. A brisket that's smoking for 17 hours is pretty tasty. Same thing. Don't try to rush the process of learning the etudes. Give yourself time to gradually learn them so they can simmer and they can sit with you and germinate. That'll get you a much better product at the end of this session. So, without further ado, let's move on to the first etude. Number 26, Tempo Di Mizerka. That means it's like a mazurka. A mazurka is a dance. It's a dance in 3 kind of like a waltz, but not quite. The big thing about the Mizerka is there's an accent on beat 2 included in the dance, and you hear that. You see these accents on beat 2 in the opening of this piece, and you constantly get an important note on beat 2. It's important to play into that and allow that to really set on those notes. You don't have to whap them and make them gross, but give some emphasis. You can hear how I'm really putting some extra weight on that beat 2 note. It gives it a really interesting feel and some musicality to it. So that's a great way to do it. The other thing about the Mizerka is a dance. So this doesn't have to be played heavy. Make it light. You even see at the beginning there's a piano, and then it gets louder. Even at the fortes, keep it light and keep it dance-like. Always make sure that you could dance to this and kind of have a nice upbeat feel. You don't want to be heavy where it's bombastic, and that'll help you keep the style and keep everything moving forward in the piece. So you start off with this intro, and at the bottom of the intro there's a long held out low A, 6 counts. Make sure to hold it out all 6 counts and count through the long note. And then we're into the main theme, this theme that comes back a lot. And it's still light, it's forte, but it's still light. And it has to have this bum, 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 beam. And you get these 4-bar phrases. And they kind of, 2 4-bar phrases forms like an 8-bar phrase sentence, kind of. And so you get the structure of that. There's 3 basic sections of this piece. And they're each separated by a fermata. And you see that, and on the 4th line there's a fermata. And then you see an immediate change of character down to piano. Real important to make that piano come out. If you can do that and keep the style. It's really going to impress the judges. They'll love the fact that you can show that you can play different dynamics and still keep it interesting and keep the sound resonant. After that fermata, so that fermata is kind of the second section. In the second section, there's another one that transitions back to the third section. But after that low G flat F sharp fermata, we get a lyrical section. So make the character change, make the mood change. Play this lyrical. Still with great time and still moving forward, but nice and lyrical. Then there's another transition into the recapitulation where the main theme comes back. And you get these staccatos. And you get some jumpiness in the line. Make the staccatos, make them separated, but make sure they still have a great sound and they have great resonance to them. Try and work to center the jumpiness. Don't just think a little bit. Think forward, maybe more forward than up and down. And then to end the piece, you're back into that main theme, and it has a nice ending with a full resonant sound. So I hope that helps you on the piece, and I hope you enjoy my performance of Etude 26. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the concert hall. I think it's a great sound, and the tuba sounds really good in that hall. So next up is the slow etude, Etude 18. This etude really will show who can have great control over their low range and play musically in the lower range of the instrument. That's the challenge of this piece, is how can you make phrases happen when you're in the bottom of the instrument. Where you can make a phrase and music happen instead of just trying to get the notes out. We'll talk about how to do that in a minute. The main thing on this one is I want you all to make sure you're practicing with the metronome on this piece. It's really important. It's eighth note 120 to 138. However, I would do to the dotted quarter note and put a triplet subdivision. So if you see my metronome, it's got 46 with a triplet subdivision. And that's really important to have that triplet. I want to be thinking triplets throughout the piece. It'll make the long notes have more musicality and sound more interesting. You'll hear what I say. You'll hear that you can sense the subdivision going through the dotted quarter note. And you can hear. Now I choose to not take a breath between the C and B natural. I like that musical drive. I breathe after it. It just, I think, phrasing wise, this piece is kind of structured in 2-bar phrases, but I like to change it up there. It makes that drive is a nice musical moment. Other things you're going to need to worry about is on this, getting a great lyrical sound. So, especially in the low range. So ways to practice that is think just like a singer. If you noticed, I sang it before I played it, and I do that a lot when I work on lyrical music. On some of the low stuff, like this one, for example, you can practice it up an octave to get the lyrical range. And that kind of helps you get the lyricism to where it's easier to make a phrase up an octave. Other thing that's going to help with this piece is making sure you're really efficient with your breathing and relaxed. When you get low, don't tighten up and squeeze and try to force the wind. Stay relaxed. It's a thick column of wind blown very easily without a lot of effort. It's going to make the low range help you. There's an exercise you can do that'll also help, and this is out of the brass tune that by Pat Sheridan and Sam Playfield. It's called Smooth Air Movement, and it's just a quarter note exercise based in different keys. And it just goes really low until you get to that. Going even a little lower. So if you can play that exercise all the way down, playing the low E's in this music actually aren't that hard to execute. It's a great exercise. Maybe doing some breathing exercises to get more efficient on the wind. That's going to be a big thing on this, to keep it lyrical and to keep it nice and flowy. You're going to need to make sure your wind is very efficient, so you'll want to do some things to help with that. And I hope now we're going to play the performance that I did in the hall. I hope you enjoy it. Hello again. And now we're going to move on to the third etude, Etude 58, Allegro Moderato. This one is probably the most technical demanding, and playing technical passages in the low range are going to pose a problem for a lot of people, myself included. I had to spend a lot of time on this, working to the low range to make sure I can play down there and play fast. Scales down there are a wonderful thing. You could also do some tonguing exercises down in like on low F and low G, where you're going just like, or just. You can come up with some exercises to work on the articulations down there. The biggest thing about this piece is that you've got to train yourself to play light. I know it says forte and you see accents. So the first thing we want to do is be like, we're tuba players. Right? But that's not going to help you execute this etude. The lighter and the lighter articulations you use, the better you're going to be. I'm thinking of this more in a mezzo forte than an actual forte. I'm finding the less I work and the lighter I play, the better it sounds. And you'll show the difference. When I get to the technical, the eighth notes, I'm actually thinking more legato than anything to get as much clarity as possible. So I'm using almost a legato tongue on those. I'm almost thinking like a Bach piece. Like if you think of the organ, the art of the fugue stuff, when the piano plays, it's very fluid when they're playing. So that's the style I'm trying to get. And I find the more I do that, the easier this etude becomes. And where it's really going to play a part is the third line down, the second measure. For about the next 12 bars after that, there's some really low, long phrases, technical phrases, where in an ideal world you'd be able to play in one breath, but it's very challenging to do. You'll hear in my recordings I have to take a couple quick catch breaths in between. I'm not quite able to get them in one breath. If you can, that's fantastic. If you can't, figure out a way to catch a breath somewhere where you can play in a way that doesn't interrupt the groove in the musical line. The best places to do this, if you go to the third line, I like to go to the low B flat 2 bars before. There's a B flat, and then it jumps up to a D flat. Kind of those when the line shifts like that, that can be good places to catch breaths. I'll show you what I mean. Excuse me. That didn't work out as well as I wanted to. I'm gonna do one more take, and hopefully I can demonstrate for you. If you notice, in spite of my finger hiccups, I could demonstrate where I took that breath, and that allowed me to get to the phrase. So there's a couple places in each of those where you can do it. The big thing in these phrases, though, is I want you to play. When you get to the phrase, I take the dynamic and I always drop it a little bit. In fact, the 4 bars leading up to that, you'll hear in the recording, I actually put a decrescendo in to set that up. And that sounds, musically, it's very interesting. Where I back it off, and it makes it interesting, but also allows me to make the phrases easier. So that's the big thing, is the breathing consideration. So you'll have to find places where you can catch the breaths if you need them through these phrases. I would, as you're going in the lower range, like if you go to the 5th line down, this one. Legato articulate down there. Use the legato articulations. That's going to help you. Don't punch too hard, otherwise those low notes are not going to come out like you want. Again, you notice I took the breath after that deep between the D flat and A flat, and allowed me to get through the low F. So that's the things I want to do. Another thing is on these octaves. Make sure the last note of the octave is long. We don't want to clip that too much. A lot of times you'll hear. And you want to play. It's almost like the rest is a silent note. Use the rest as a springboard, and that comes into play a couple bars later where you have the pop 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 and pop 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 and pop 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 and pop pop pop. So in that point, when I play that, I think of that as a silent note, not really a rest. If you notice, pop 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 and pop 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 and pop 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 and pop, I'm making a sound to help me organize that so I don't crunch it. And you can hear that. That's going to be important to really keep the 16th notes. So that'd be a good place to put the metronome on 16th note subdivision to help you with that. The rest of the piece is basically the same as we've talked about. You don't have as long, there's not the long phrases that you have in the middle, but it's the same. Keep it light, keep it, have some energy, but also light. Again, I'll go back to the Bach thing. If listen to some recordings of the Art of the Fugue by Bach, and you can kind of hear these noodling technical lines in the organ and the piano. And that's kind of what we're mimicking in this point. I hear a lot of Bach in this etude. So listening to some of those Bach fugues will help you, I think, get the style right in this piece. So that is what I have to say about this piece. We're going to listen to the final performance of the 3rd etude. But before we do that, I want to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this clinic. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me. I'm on Facebook. I'd love to get a chance to talk to you and talk to you about tuba and answer any of your questions and help you out the best I can. Thank you for your time, and I hope this video is provided useful, and good luck in your preparations. Bye-bye.